Welcome back to the Sooner Pocket Podcast. Final one, probably before OU's bowl game. I guess actually we're gonna have one more before OU's bowl game. Because I'm not recording on Christmas. I don't know about you, Chris, but I'm gonna be too busy with Christmas things on Christmas. OU gets a draw against Navy in the Armed Forces Bowl, December 27th, 11 a.m. I presume on ESPN, ESPNU, ESPN News, ESPN Plus. We can keep going down and down the totem pole of ESPN networks till we find the one where we're being broadcast. We had our schedule released today for 25, same opponents for the most part in conference, just a little change to the order and flip the field for each of them, aside from Texas. And we get to face off against Michigan. So the OU Michigan game, I know from some reading that both teams have tried in the last couple of years to get out of this home and home series, but neither was really successful. So we are going to be playing the Wolverines here in Norman first, and then we will go next year in 2027 to Ann Arbor, face off against the Wolverines. Chris, what are your thoughts on OU's bowl game, facing off against Navy, our prospects there, and then what stood out to you most about our schedule this for next season?
So first, it'll be on ESPN, 11 a.m., December 27th. When it comes to the bowl game, of course, I have thoughts about us being in the Armed Forces Bowl. But if we didn't want to be in the Armed Forces Bowl playing at 11 a.m. on a Friday, then we shouldn't have gone 6-6 on the year. That's the reality of it.
Yep.
Navy, they're a solid team. They were ranked for much of the season. Granted, they got embarrassed by Notre Dame, and after that, things just kind of went downhill for them. But they've got a really solid offense. They're not just a triple option team. They can also air the ball out, and they've got a good enough defense that's gotten them as far as they have gone. The Army Navy game should be good, and I anticipate the OU Navy game to be good. I'm hoping for God, I'd want so badly for us to avoid the stress that was the last time we played a service academy. Remember what happened in that game?
Yep.
Do you know
Overtime, and Kenneth Murray, I think, was the one that set the record for the most tackles, most
in a
solo
single
tackles in
game?
a game.
Yep. Uh, do you know how embarrassing it is when your offense has Kyler Murray, CeeDee Lamb, Marquise Brown, Grant Calcaterra, Trey Sermon, Kennedy Brooks, and if I remember correctly, we won the Joe Moore Award that year for the best offensive line, and we were held to 21 points. We were shut out in the second half, Samuel. We were shut out in the second half. That was a terrible game. I'm hoping we don't see a repeat of that, given that Andrew Anthony, Jalil Farouk, and Nick Anderson have all hit the portal, and JJ Hester has hit the portal, and Jaquez Petaway has hit the portal. I don't think we're going to see a single pass thrown in that game from either team. So I think the game will probably last about an hour and a half, and we'll have a final score of something like 10-6 or something. Hoping OU can come out with the victory. We're 8.5 point favorites as of this moment. When it comes to next season, I don't think there's anyone in college football who will be able to say that they have a more difficult schedule next year than OU does. All of our out of conference games we get out of the way before Texas. So when it comes time to play in November, we play Tennessee, LSU, Missouri, and Alabama. I don't think it's in that order, but those are the four teams all in November. Uh, a lot of those teams we get to play in Norman. Some of them, like Alabama, we have to play in Tuscaloosa. Uh, Tennessee, we have to play at Neyland. That's not going to be fun. Michigan, I anticipate them being a lot better next year than they were this year. It took them a minute to get their bearings under Sharon Moore this year, but they really hit a nice groove as the season went on. And they've got that five-star quarterback. I can't remember his name, but I think he's like the number one quarterback in the class. Flipped from LSU to
Yeah, the
Michigan. He's
flip from
probably going to
LSU.
be he's probably going to be their starter. So you had a game against Michigan in with games against Ole Miss, Auburn, Alabama, Tennessee, Missouri, LSU, Texas. That's not going to be an easy year. It is a terrible year to have a coach on the hot seat. because there are very few winning
Yeah.
scenarios in that. We knew that it would be the same teams, but gosh, it's going to be rough. But I'm hoping Venables can turn it around.
Yeah, looking at this, I'm really not sure how much of a redemption year we're going to get next year, especially with the turnover that we're going to have at the wide receiver position and on the offensive line, and then some in our defensive secondary as well. Um, Stutzman and Bowman both, aging out. Desan McCullough entering the transfer portal. Lost some experience and some strength on our defensive line. Um, Illinois State, that's a win. Michigan, I think right now is probably not going to be a win. I think that's going to be a tough game. Um, a very stout Michigan team. Michigan is known for classic Big Ten football. It's punch you in the mouth ball. Um, I think given what they're going to have and what we're probably going to have, we're looking at 1-1 by the end of the Michigan game. Temple, we're going to beat. Auburn, we're going to beat here in Norman. Kent State, we're going to beat. So through 5 games, we're 4-1, not bad. Texas is going to be a wild card. Quinn Ewers, I assume, uh, will not be the quarterback there next year. They've had some guys transfer out. They're going to have some youth promoting, obviously. Arch Manning, most notably. They'll have some guys on the defense. So that one's kind of a toss up. You know how that game goes. So after Texas, we're looking at either 5-1 or 4-2, which isn't bad going into the home stretch of the season. The issue is, where do we get 2 wins in that home stretch of the season? Going to South Carolina, who is on a hot streak right now this season. And their recruiting is, carrying a lot of steam forward right now for next season. They've got some good experience returning. And, on top of all of that, one is in Columbia. So right now, if I was guessing, saying Michael Hawkins is the quarterback for now, given that we don't have Mateer officially in the portal yet. I think South Carolina probably wins that one. So we're either 5-2. We'll say for the sake of argument, we beat Texas. We pull off the upset. We're 5-2 after South Carolina. Ole Miss. You got to catch Ole Miss on the right day. If you catch them on the right day, you can beat them. I like OU to pull that upset, 6-2. Tennessee is a no-go in Knoxville. Alabama's going to get revenge next year in Tuscaloosa. So we're sitting at 6-4 there. Through 10 games, Missouri we will beat. Some guys leaving through the transfer portal and not their best recruiting class coming in this year. We all saw Williams Nwaneri take off. So 7-4 through 11. And then LSU, I don't know that we're going to beat, even with that one being in Norman. I think they run too much of an offensive juggernaut right now. With the youth that we're going to have on defense at that point, I don't see it happening. So 7-5 is where I see us at the end of next year, not in contention for SEC, for the SEC title. And Brent Venables at the end of a 7-5 year, that's I don't know for sure whether he's our head coach going into 26. So that's just my initial prediction, game by game on next season.
I got to disagree with you on some of that because you're approaching it as if we're going to have a very similar team that we had this year, but a little bit worse in a couple categories. Something to remember is that whether it was at Western Kentucky, whether it was at Washington State or anywhere else he's been, Ben Arbuckle is batting 1,000 with quarterbacks. He has yet to have a bad quarterback. And also, there have been a lot of rumblings from the beat writers that even if we don't get Mateer, we're still probably going after a quarterback in the portal to be our starter. They'll give Michael Hawkins a chance to compete, but there seem to be a lot of people who think that whoever transfers to OU next year will be our starter. You've also got to remember that we're going to be bringing in some big names through the portal at wide receiver. We did it last year. We did it the year before. Every year we seem to bring in at least one, sometimes two big names through the portal in receivers. And I know that a lot of the beat writers have been approaching it with the view of they're willing to throw the bag at wide receivers in the portal. They want to bring in guys who are going to be able to contribute a lot day one, and they're willing to do whatever it takes to get them there. When it comes to our defense, the areas where we're losing the most experience, a lot of them have a lot of depth. So you've got the interior defensive line. Most of our guys there are going to be staying. Of course, you've got Dejon Terry who's going to go. You've got Dominic Williams who's going to stay. R. Mason Thomas, I hope he stays. They haven't really said one way or the other what he's leaning towards, but there's a very good chance he stays. We lose Ethan Downs, we lose Trace Ford, but we keep PJ Adibaware, and we get Danny Okoye with a year under his belt. We also keep Jaden Jackson, who was a true freshman All-American on PFF. Uh, we're keeping Eli Bowen in the secondary. Uh, Billy Bowman is going to be replaced with Peyton Bowen. We've got Robert Spears Jennings, who's a known playmaker. Uh, Kobe McKenzie got a lot of meaningful snaps this year, and Kip Lewis has been a monster. Kip Lewis, I think, stays at least another year. So we've got a really good defense back there. There isn't going to be as much youth on the defense or inexperience on the defense as there will be on the offense. But with the offensive coordinator that we're bringing in and his record with not just quarterbacks, but just with offenses in general, I I find it very hard to believe that we will not have a really good offense next year. If we are not in the top 50 offensively, then I will consider the year a failure given what we have. Plus, we saw in 2023, Brent Venables knows how to have a team with a good offense. We were still trying to get some things figured out defensively and had Ted Roof as our coordinator. But with Zach Alley, they've gotten a lot of things figured out defensively. So I if I had to give a prediction right now, just overall record, I'd say 9-3. Those last 6 games of the season, I think we're probably going to go 500 in those. But the first 6, I could very easily see us being 6-0 after the Texas
We're going
game.
to have to pull off some upsets to get to 9 wins.
We'll see if
What are
they
the
end up being upsets.
Yeah. I mean that's the nature of it. We'll see. The season's not here, but um, just based off how these teams are right now, what they're recruiting, and how they're looking for next year, I think really any one of those final 6 games, any one of them, um, aside from Missouri, I really think we're going to be the better team on the field and we're going to be the better coach team. I think that all
Mhm.
comes together. Those final 6 games, South Carolina, Ole Miss, Tennessee, Bama, Missouri, and LSU, aside from Missouri, you know, give us the Missouri win. What are the 2 upsets you see that give us a total of 3 wins out of that bucket?
I think if we can have a really good offense next year, if we can have the offense that we're hoping Ben Arbuckle will bring, I think we're going to be able to pull off the win against LSU and Norman. Uh, Tennessee, even though they ended up beating us, we showed them that Norman is not an easy environment to play in. They had all types of trouble throughout most of that game, especially their first 2 drives of the game went 3-and-out both times. And I can't remember if it was the radio or the TV crew, but they were talking about how hard the fans were making for Nico Iamaleava and the offense to hear each other. Uh, Alabama learned that Norman is still a difficult place to play. So I think LSU, with them coming to Norman, if we can have a better offense is what kept us out of the game this year. We were in that game until our offense was shut down. I think that's one. And South Carolina, I love Shane Beamer, but remember the last 5 or 6 games of 2022, South Carolina was on a roll. They were absolutely plowing through people. They beat Clemson that year, who was still trying to get into the playoffs, if I remember correctly. They ended up beating them like 31-30. South Carolina has been pretty inconsistent. They'll be really great for a while and then really not. So I think coming off the Texas game, it'll be difficult because we always seem to have a hangover. But if you're asking me to pick 2 upsets, LSU and South Carolina.
We'll see. I hope you're right. I I don't have as much faith in our ability to be the better team on the field next year. I think we're going to have the coaching staff in place. I just don't think we're going to have the personnel on the field to pull out 9 wins. But
We'll see.
definitely hope I'm wrong. Hope I'm wrong. I will say if we go 7-5 next year, I just don't see how Venables keeps his job unless the boosters aren't ponying up for the buyout.
Would not be easy.
But we'll see. Score prediction on the bowl game. I'm going to take OU in this one. I'm going to take us 17-6. I don't see that we have much of any offensive production. I think we take advantage of a couple busts that Navy will probably have in the deep part of the field. Hawkins will capitalize on those one of two ways. He'll heave it up. Somebody will be there and grab that ball, or he will run it right through him, like he did against Auburn. So I'm going to say 17-6 OU over Navy.
I think we've got both the X's and the O's and the Jimmies and the Joes to have our offense overpower Navy's defense. Because at the end of the day, you just send Brennan Thompson on a vertical route, and I don't know very many Navy defensive backs who could keep up with him. So
is Thompson playing?
I hope so. They haven't said one way or the other. He would have had at that point almost a month to recover. So I hope he's playing.
Yeah, we've seen what that does.
But Gabe Ikard and Teddy Lehman actually brought up something interesting. We'll talk about that later about that. But even like the young guys, we've got some really fast true freshmen. Just get them out there and heave the ball up to them. At this point, what's the worst that can happen? It's not like bowl eligibility is on the line anymore. So I think we're going to be able to take advantage of a few mismatches. I have us winning 28-6.
Fair enough. Tell me about what Ikard and Lehman were saying.
So it was something that they implied. It sounds like some of the team. It wasn't the OU medical staff that was kind of messing things up. It was some third party. Specifically, what they said, if I remember, I can't remember which one of them said it. It was the podcast that came out this morning, the Oklahoma Breakdown. They said for the medical staff at OU, it is hard to have a consistent treatment plan when the guys you're treating are going other places and not doing what you want them to do. They said that Nick Anderson, along with a few other players, they didn't name the other players, but they said Anderson and a few players started going to some third party. And the ones who stopped going to the third party and came back found a way to get healthy with just our training team and get back on the field. But apparently the ones who kept going with that, I don't know if it was a disciplinary thing or if it was they weren't getting the care they needed thing. Apparently there was a third party involved who was making things difficult. Brent Venables and company are apparently they're very happy with the current state of our training staff. They know that injury wise we got dealt a bad hand this year, and apparently this third party group, company, whatever it is, did not help matters.
No. I'm glad Venables is happy with our training staff. I didn't see a lot this year to be happy about with that, but it's good he's happy with them. The college football playoff bracket going into the postseason. Penn State unquestionably 6-seeded, got the easiest draw of the entire field through the first 2 rounds, facing SMU and then assuming they win that one, facing Boise State. After that, they will probably be facing Georgia. Georgia facing off against the winner of Notre Dame and Indiana. I don't see either of those teams beating Georgia, especially not Indiana. Penn State, it's a golden ticket to Penn State right out of the pretty much into the quarterfinals, semifinals. Yeah. Overall, I think looking at this, I don't know who's going to beat Oregon. I haven't seen that there's any team really that can shutter Dylan Gabriel enough to be able to do it. Penn State obviously made that a game last weekend. I think they only lost by a possession, which is good, but um, they're going to have to find a way to keep Dylan Gabriel out of the end zone. And I don't know that there's a team in this field that's going to do that enough to be able to overcome Oregon. So I've got Oregon winning this championship this year. I think they're probably going to be facing off against Georgia or Notre Dame. Notre Dame, the only way they get there is beating Georgia by an upset. They're the only team in this field I see pulling an upset potentially in that part of the bracket. So I think you've got Oregon, Georgia, or Oregon, Notre Dame, and I'll take Oregon in both of those games.
I agree that Oregon is probably your national champion this year. I have it being a different route though. Uh, when it comes to Oregon, there are three teams that gave them the most trouble this year, and all of them are in the college football playoff. Ohio State, if Walker Howard had a little bit more clock awareness, Ohio State would have been able to attempt a game-winning field goal in regulation, but instead he went down. Will Howard, I mean. Instead, he went down as time expired and it was too late. Oregon won that game. The Oregon Boise State game at the beginning of the year was tied literally with 0 seconds left because the ball was still in the air, the game winning field goal for Oregon. If you take away two kick return touchdowns that Oregon had in that game, Boise State's offense outscored Oregon's offense. It was special teams that won that game for Oregon. And then Penn State put up a lot of points against Oregon last week, which isn't something we've seen too much this year. The thing is with Penn State, though, as their offense looked really good against Oregon in the Big Ten championship, they have not looked that good all season. I think they kind of caught a lightning in a bottle game. I think they caught a game against Oregon, kind of like our offense caught against Alabama, where just for whatever reason, they couldn't be stopped. I think they go up again. I think Penn State handles them pretty easily. And I think SMU has the chance to really upset Penn State in round one. Notre Dame, I don't know. They're a dangerous team. If Carson Beck isn't playing for Georgia, I think Notre Dame could pull off the upset there. First round, I've got Texas beating Clemson. Uh, and I honestly think Texas's path to the semifinals is the easiest because Clemson is going to be the best offense that Texas has faced all year. But at the same time, Clemson has been so inconsistent. I think Texas will be able to manhandle them. And then Arizona State, that's been a fun story. I don't think they'll be able to hang with Texas in the second half. But after that, I don't see Texas advancing past the semifinal. I've got either, let's see here. I've got the same national championship games you do. Oregon, Penn State. Oregon, Notre Dame, or Oregon, Georgia. I think Oregon, Georgia would be a much more entertaining game. If it was Oregon, Notre Dame, I think Oregon wins in a blowout. But either way, Dylan Gabriel's holding that trophy at the end of the year, I think.
Yeah, see, and I don't even know how entertaining of a game Oregon Georgia will be. I don't think Georgia has the offensive competence to keep up with Oregon.
And they've got a good defense, though.
Yeah, they've got a good defense. OU learned this year, good defense will only take you so far. These days, unfortunately, very much to my chagrin, you've got to have an offense. Iowa has been the recipient of that lesson as well. I don't see anybody hanging with Oregon. I think Oregon is probably, assuming they win the championship, Oregon will go down as the best team of the 2020s. Because the team they've got right now, the way they're winning, and the teams they're going to have to beat to get to the championship and win it, that's got to be a good team. And to have done it undefeated by that point, assuming they win,
Be
that's
the first
bad,
16-0 team.
Yeah. So I would have Oregon preemptively as the single best team of the 2020s. So,
I think the one team you'd have in contention there is 2020 Alabama. That was a good team.
yep, in contention, does not win. All right. Sooner Pocket Podcast. I'm Sam Knight here with Chris. It's been good talking. We'll be back for one more show before Christmas. And that show will be our pregame for the OU Navy Armed Forces Bowl, 11 a.m. Friday, December 27th on ESPN, as Chris laid out for us earlier in the show. Make sure to check out our blog, www.soonerpocket.com. A lot of great content on there. Everybody stay safe. Boomer Sooner.
Boomer Sooner.